Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us today. We are very excited to come live from our UK Training Centre in Sandhurst. We've got with us Richard Swan, who's the Director of Technical Customer Services, and we've got Dan Holmes and Andy Kibblewhite, our two senior technical trainers. And we're going to be presenting our new GRP connection collar system to you today. If you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them into our Q&A. And at the end of the live demonstration, the team will be very happy to answer your questions. So I'm going to hand you over to Richard.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so quick run through. We're going to do, as Dawn said, demonstrate our new GRP connection collars. So I think a few weeks ago we did one with the felt. Now our felt collars are mainly used inside buildings and inside pipes that have already been lined. And the new GRP connection collars, they are a felt, glass fibre felt sandwich. Got plenty of rigidity, plenty of extra strength. You can see here with Dan as he picks one up, the felt one's all floppy, and the glass fibre one is very, very stiff. They've introduced the glass fibre ones mainly for repairing damaged connections in buried pipelines. And because of that, we have to have more strength, and also you'll see that the actual GRP connection collar is longer than the equivalent felt version. And that's because we want to go past the joints and we want to give more structural strength. So with the felt ones, we can use an epoxy. With the GRP connection collars, we can actually use either an epoxy resin or a silicate resin. As part of the demonstration today, what we're going to do is we're going to wet out the connection collar. We're going to use the smart controller and show you the smart controller. And then we're going to go over, once we've impregnated it out, we're going to show you the rods that we use to install the connection collar. And then finally, we're going to introduce and talk a bit about the Midi steamer, and also the pressure guard. So Dan, when you're ready, over to you.
Okay. All right, thanks for that. So as Richard said, these were the original felt connection collars that we introduced a while ago, and we're now bringing in these GRP ones just to show you that they are much thicker than the previous ones. These are 6 mil thick. Quite a difference when we put them into the ground. And I don't know if you can see there, but you can see the glass fibers in the sandwich, and yeah, it makes a big difference. So what we'll do is, yeah, and like the previous version, it's still got stitching on it, so it makes it much easier to line up when you're actually in the drain. So once we've got this on the bladder and this is all tucked in, it makes it easier for us to see it with the camera down the lateral. Okay. Cool. Right. So we've pre-built the bladder onto the tool, and so that's all set up and ready. I need to put a little bit more lubricant inside it just so that it slides in a little bit easier. And then I'm going to inflate it using the control box. And then I'm going to lube up the outside of it so that we can actually extract this bladder, leaving the connection collar in place. Okay. So whilst I'm going to do that, my colleague Andrew is going to mix up some resin. So I'm just going to put some lubricant in, like so. This is a PTFE lubricant that we use. Just makes things go a little bit smoother. So I just put some in like that.
PTFE for the heat as well.
PTFE for the heat. So the reason we use it is because this whole system can be used with a steam box, which we'll show you when we come to switch it on. So that's like that. I'm just going to rig it up to the control box like this. So what this control box does is it gives me positive pressure and it also gives me a vacuum. And currently I want a bit of positive pressure to inflate it and then be able to lube it up. Just makes that a little bit easier. So
one of the benefits of the smart controller, you can see that it's got a handle on it that flicks left or right depending pressure or vacuum. So when you've got resin all over your hands, it's really good. You can put the unit on the floor, and then you can operate the unit with your feet, so you're not getting resin over the control unit. So Dan's just putting some release agent over the bladder.
So when we come to extract it, it just makes it a lot easier if we've got a little bit of silicone grease on it. Also makes it a tiny bit easier to drag the connection collar onto the bladder as well. There we go. Lovely. So all I'm going to do now is drop a little bit of pressure out of it, and then I'm going to pop this this piece here inside the rest of the bladder. Now I've got a stick to do that with. Makes it a bit easier for me. Like so. Okay, now I'm going to vacuum it down. Just going to take all the air out of it, which will make getting the connection collar on much easier. So if we can have the other board up, and I'll just put that there for a second. Just move that to the edge. Okay, so stitch a pair of gloves because they've now got lubricant all over them. Thank you. And we are now ready to impregnate our connection collar, which we're going to do from the inside. So Andy's pouring some, this is epoxy resin that we're using on this particular one.
Yeah, very slow cure.
Very slow cure. Gives us 12 hours of curing time, which means that we've got an awful lot of working time. So what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze this in, and you should be able to see it coming through on the outside of the connection collar. So Andy's robbed his granny's kitchen and got a roller.
Shh, don't tell her.
Oh no, sorry mate. Truth's going to come out sooner or later. Right, and I've already got resin starting to come through onto the outside of the connection collar. It's getting sticky now. Excellent.
Got a 12-hour cure, but that's not how long we're going to wait for it to go off, because you're going to use the steel.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So we'll just it gives us a nice long working time to get this thing impregnated, loaded up onto the bladder, and installed, and then we can then speed it up by switching on the steam. As you can see there on this side, I've also got impregnation coming right the way through. And it's coming through on the upstand as well from where we poured it in. All right, let's put a bit more in there, please. I keep going, that'll do. Yeah, that'll do. Lovely tar. What I'm going to do now is work that up to the very top. Like so.
It takes a little bit of time, doesn't it? So that
It does, yeah.
Just
That's where the working time really comes into its own. And we've got plenty of time to do this. And we're not-
GRP. Also want the resin into the GRP to get it the same.
Yeah. That's why we're using an epoxy in this particular case. Right, so let's do the ends. This is where it starts to get a bit messy because we're going to roll that out. There is quite a bit in there. Right.
Yeah.
Look at that, lovely. Right, that's good. So all we're trying to do now is just get resin into the bits that are a little bit paler than the others, and just to give us a bit more consistency. Oh.
So as you can see from the video, you can still see the black stitching on the connection collar, even though we've used a green epoxy resin. So the guys can see where they're going and where they've been, and they can also see the stitching. So when they're trying to line up the connection collar in the pipe,
Okay,
use
good.
the black stitching as the guide.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just fold the end of the connection collar over, open it up a little bit. The reason I do that is because then when I'm trying to push that bladder and the tool through this connection collar, it just means I've got something else to grab against. So, yeah, you want to hold that there. So with the other things that we've done on this particular tool is we've put a bit of tape around the steam valve here. We've put a little bit of tape here around the cone on the outside for where the bladder connects to the tool. And it just means that it makes it a little bit easier for us to pull it on, and it makes it a little bit cleaner when we come to strip the tool. And the steam valve is definitely open, which we'll prove in a minute when I turn the air supply on. So, yeah. Oh, that side, sorry. Yep. Yeah, you just hold that in. That's it.
Well-oiled machine.
It is like a well-oiled machine, you're right. Right, so I'm going to pull that up to about there. I'm going to have a look inside. Yeah, I can see that the finger's been where it's been tucked into the bladder. Just going to pull that out of there. Just a little bit more resin on there. There we go. Right. At this stage, I'm going to inflate it so that the finger comes up inside the connection collar. Oh, thank you. Right, so if you want to just steady that for me, Andy, and I'll put a tiny bit of pressure in there. And that should inflate nicely, and the finger should come straight up.
So for the glass fibre connection collars, the main hose pipe we do from DN100 up to DN300, which is 4 to 12 inches, and then the connection pipe varies from DN100 up to DN300 as well.
Just going to push a little bit. There we go. Right. Cool. So there we are. That's now the connection collar is now on the tool. At this point, we can deflate, we can vacuum it down so that we can move it around, and we can just check it before we do anything else with it. So are we quite happy with it?
Yep.
So now what we'll do is we'll put a tiny bit of pressure in. We'll use our trusty stick. We want to get it started. A little bit less pressure, a little bit less. A little bit less. Are you all right with that? Okay, we're just going to, now that we've got that folded in, we're just going to finish it off with a stick. Okay. Right. Yeah, let's vacuum it down and then we'll tape it up.
I'll get rid of these gloves. You're very
I'll hold it and you can tape it. All right. Okay.
pre-cut bits of tape.
Right. So what we're going to do is put some tape around that we know snaps at certain pressure. And that will hold the connection collar on whilst we push it into the pipe.
This is very similar to what other people may have used elastic bands and wire.
Yeah, you can use elastic bands, but I wouldn't use wire, or well, I wouldn't use either. I'd use the hybrid tape. Yeah, other systems use other methods, but we use a hybrid tape because we know that it breaks when we want it to. The other thing that we've done here is we've tucked the finger into the bladder so that as we're pushing it along, any resistance on the outside of the connection collar actually helps push or hold the connection collar onto the bladder as we're pushing down the drain. So we're going to be pushing that way, which means any resistance is going to push this way. So that that finger's tucked inside the bladder that way. It just helps us do what we need it to do. Okay, so at this point, we're now going to snap on our rods. Now these rods have got they got a locking nut on them, which we've done up before we snap them on. So when we snap them on, we know that they're locked together. They've also got, these rods have also got a hex on the end of them, so that we can then use the rods to steer the connection collar into position. So take that. All right. Okay, so we've now disconnected from the control box. We're now connected up to the steamer, and I'm going to place this inside the drain. I'm now at the manhole. I'm now down a deep manhole. I'm now shouting at people above me to take up some slack. Push a little bit, pull a little bit. All right, so that's now gone in.
TV screen, which is relaying what our CCTV, which is down the lateral connection, is looking at.
Okay, so can you see that? Yeah, on the screen behind me, you can just see it. Haven't gone too far. That's the first one. So it's about there. So if you want to turn that, that's it. Keep going. Keep going. So I'm now looking at a screen where I can see the stitching, and we're just going to line it up a little bit. You could turn that back the other way ever so slightly, Andy. Other way. Other way. Keep going. Lovely. That'll do you. Right. I need it to turn clockwise just a touch. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. We've cut you some holes in the T here so you can see as it inflates. And we're going to slowly introduce some pressure into the bladder, and then the finger will come up and it will bring the connection collar with it.
So this is the bladder. So we're going to it's a 100 by 100 or a 4 by 4 inch bladder.
Okay,
So we're going to
there we go.
inflate it to 0.45 bar or 7 psi. It's not the pressures that would use if you're using a packer.
Yeah, much lower pressures than if you were putting this in with a patch in with a packer. So at this point, we can, if we want, we can now vacuum that the bladder down so that we can check the connection collar should we need to. I don't think we do, so I'm quite happy to carry on. And at this point, we are going to switch on our steaming unit, or we're going to introduce a steaming unit to you. So I'm just going to, as Stephen's going to make his way over, I'm going to then talk you through what we're going to do with the steam unit, because we've been asked about this. So here's how it works. We have already switched, excuse me as I duck underneath rods. Right, about half an hour. So this unit has now been switched on for about half an hour. It switches on here. These two lights come on, and when these two lights go off, you know that it's somewhere around the right sort of setting or temperature, I should say. So the other clue is the boiler pressure. Boiler pressure needs to be up to nearly 3 bar, and we've already set our air pressure with our regulator here to just below 0.5 of a bar. Okay, so the next thing I now need to do is I need to set some times. So this resin that we're using has a 12-hour cure time, and I want to steam this resin for about an hour and a half. So what we're going to do is I'm going to program this timer up here. Nothing's going to happen with this steaming unit until I've set this timer. So I press the first button and it gives me my hours. Second button gives me minutes, and I'm on 20 at the moment. I'm just going to increase that up to 1 hour 30, and then it's seconds, which I'm not really worried about. And then I press it again. Everything stops flashing. That's now ready. So it's switched on. It's up to boiler pressure, and that's ready to go. So the way that this works is, I need to set. I've set or preset the temperature on here to 90 degrees centigrade.
That's all in the charts, isn't it?
That which is all in the charts, which is in the manual. So actually, to get the thing to work, so I've already turned it on. It's all the way out to pressure. I know it's the temperature's risen up because I've got a reading here. This reading is just the outlet. Okay, so as soon as I press the start button, that's going to climb. That pressure is going to drop, and this temperature is going to climb up. So I'm ready to go. So I'm going to press start, and I hear a click, that means that the steam valve is open. Now I need to open up the steam control. Okay, I've already got air flowing through. I can hear air coming out on the far end of the bladder because I absolutely categorically ensure that that steam valve was open. And I'm now going to crack my steam valve up here. So I'm going to crack that ever so gently, and I'm going to open it up very slowly. Whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to keep an eye on my boiler pressure. So I'm just opening that up slowly, and my boiler pressure should drop down from 3 to about 1 bar. And then I know I'm good. Right. The elements have come back on. My pressure is dropping, which means I'm getting something going through this pipe here. So being delivered to my bladder, just opening that up. And I should see that temperature start to rise. Okay, so I'm gently opening this steam valve all the time. My temperatures start to come up. My pressure is dropping, which is fine. And all the while, my output pressure hasn't changed because it's regulated by the pressure regulator. That's gone from 30 degrees, 35 degrees up to 68, 69 degrees. So it's now, I know that that is pumping steam through the bladder. Okay.
Before we were doing this, we topped this up with water fully.
Yeah, it's completely full of water. You have to fill it up to the top before you start.
And what's going on there with that big T piece?
Okay, so the big T piece that you can probably see here, which Steve's just going to move back. Okay, so this is my pressure guard unit. So what this does is this is going to monitor the pressure going to my bladder. And should the pressure drop, this will alarm. It will send me a text message. There's an app for it that goes on your phone, and it will send me a message, which means that we'll send young Stephen back out to site to go and sort out what the problem is. It's usually, and if you plug this into the same power supply as a compressor, for example, it will tell you if their power's gone off and all that sort of stuff. So it's a remote monitoring system.
Data logging.
Oh, and it also data logs. Yeah, it data logs everything. So you've got a record of it, at what time something happened and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's very good bit of kit. Right. So the other thing to tell you about, I suppose, is the I'm now going to introduce the rods. So the other thing I needed to tell you about with the steamer are these rods. So the rods that we use, not only do they lock together and they've got a hex inside so that we can steer it, they also can take the temperature that the steamer produces. Okay, but they are only really for a maximum of 15 meters. Okay, if you're going to go over 15 meters, then yeah, you might need to look at something slightly different, as in a different resin or something like that. Yeah, we can put 15 of these push rods on there, 1.5 meters each, and that's the maximum we can go with this little steaming unit. Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
That's all right. So in the operations manual, firstly with the Midi steamer, it has a 10-litre boiler capacity, but only 7.5 is usable. So it will trip out if you run out of water. When it's empty, it weighs 20 kilograms. At full, it's 29 kilograms. It comes in various power sources. So in the UK, we have it as a 110 volt, 16 amp. In Europe, it's available in 230 volts, 16 amp. In the US, for the people from the USA who are on the call, you have two options. You can have 120 volt, 30 amp power plug, or you can have 2 times 120 volt, 15 amp plugs. So if you're just steaming a connection collar, then you only need a single plug in there for the dual one, or on the other machines, you only have one of the heaters on. If you actually use it to steam cure a lining, then you need to have both heaters on, which means on the dual plug versions, you need to have both plugs plugged in. Like Dan said, we are limited to 15 rods, which is around 22 meters. And also we have in the operations booklet manual, you need to print out chart 1, which is the inflation pressure. And the smaller the finger is on the connection collar, the more pressure we have to inflate by. But chart 1 has all those pressures in there. If you're steam curing it, then you have to also adjust the air pressure and the temperature, depending on how many of the rods you've got on there. And that relates to chart 2. And there's a simple calculation on page, I'm trying to think what it is now. I had it earlier. On page 22 of the operation manual, it just explains how you take the ambient cured pressures and then adjust them accordingly for the number of rods. So you increase the pressure slightly for each rod. And if you're steam curing it again, we have to have an increase in temperature depending on what your cure temperature is for the resin system that you're using. Dan also mentioned the pressure guard, and like I said, we've got that on here. It is a smart device. It is based on LTE-M technology, right? So wherever you are, or wherever you log in on the phone and you have the master phone for that unit, but then you can add more users onto the system. And what you can do then, you can have up to 10 different phone numbers on the pressure guard, and that information is also data logged, so you can download the information at the end of the job as well to give to the client. I think done, and the guys have done really well. I think that's now curing away. The timer will switch off when it comes to the end of the cure, and then when it switches off, it will just then allow air pressure to go through the bladder, so it will actually then cool down the bladder.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard. And thank you very much to Dan and Andy there, and Steve behind the scenes too. Great job, guys, as always. Does anybody have any questions for the team about the system?
Sure.
You can pop them into the chat. Of course, you know that if you do have any questions and you can't think of them off the top of your head, then the team's always available to answer them for you. Our contact details, most of you probably know our contact details by now, but you can also head over to the Picote Group website and you'll have everyone's phone numbers and emails on there too. Steph has very helpfully also, thank you Steph, popped some very useful information in the chat for you. So there are links there to more information about the connection collar system, also the Midi steamer, which Dan went through earlier, that really useful new pressure guard that we have, and the smart control unit as well. So all those different parts of equipment that you saw relating to this, there's some very, very good information there too. So, and thanks for that, Steph. She's also very helpfully popped in details on how to find your nearest Picote reseller. If you don't already know who that is, then you can find those details on the picotegroup.com website. We are also going to put this recording onto YouTube once we're done. So you can always use it as a reference point if there's anything that you're wanting to go over again in your own time. And of course, you can always find information on Picote Institute, which is a wealth of resources on it as well. So if you haven't already, you can register for free at picoteinstitute.com. And there is a lot of information, including videos, free courses. There's lots of resources like your operating manuals, fact sheets with all that information that Richard talked about earlier on there too. So that would be at picoteinstitute.com. Richard, I have a question for you. So just watching that just now, the installation tool head that this is built on, that you don't have to rebuild that if you need to go in a different direction, do you? You're on mute, Richard. We might never know.
Doubting at me.
So
What's
good
unique
until
to our
then.
system
Come on.
is we have on the end with the steam valve, the steam port. So that can be unscrewed and then switched to the other end of the installation tool. So it's great because you don't have to build up new tools, especially with wide connections where the wide connection can be in two different directions. Right, all we do is literally take the steam port off and screw it on. If you're not steam curing it, then you need to make sure that before you go into the pipe, you actually turn the steam valve off. And obviously, if you are steam curing it, you have to remember to turn the valve back on. And it's just a little crosshead screwdriver, flathead screwdriver. And it's a couple of turns to open or close the steam vent.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's really useful. Svana has a question. Hi, Svana. And she said, well done in the presentation, guys. I totally agree with that. She says, how hot is the steam coming out inside the pipe? Does it affect the liner already in the pipe?
So we've got a steam controlled temperature. We control the temperature on the steamer. But like I said, if we get any heat loss, and there's a small amount of heat loss through each rod, in that case, then we slowly increase the temperature. And that details are on chart 2 in the technical manual. I am in the process of putting together an operator's checklist, so we have all this stuff in probably 2 to 3 pages instead of having a 25-page manual. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. I hope that answers your question there. Dan, I have a question for you as well. So the GRP system, would you say that this is the system you should always be using underground?
Absolutely, absolutely needs to be 100%. If you're doing any underground stuff, this is the product that you need to be using. Previous one is great for inside a building in line pipes. This is the product for outside underground. Yeah, without a doubt.
This is up in people's game, isn't it?
Yeah, this is really is a bit of a game changer because the it's so strong because it's 5mm thick, glass reinforced. You can use a variety of resins with it. Yeah, it is very, very different product and definitely something you should be using for a structural repair.
Fantastic. And Andy, I don't know if you have the mic near you, but you were out on a job recently, weren't you, where you used the GRP liner? Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we were working on a lined pipe that'd be lateral cut. And we put one in on there, and then we've done one where we had a broken pipe with a rat problem in the property. So they were getting out through the hole. The junction was underneath the building, so digging was probably not the best option. And we were able, Stephen and myself went outside and pushing the GRP for strength, sealed the hole up, done in a day. Excavation wise would have been a nightmare, probably a week's worth of work. The water company were very happy. Their customer was off of their back. And the customer was more than happy. I think they went to bed that night quite happy that they weren't going to hear rats. Very good installation. We had all the time to install it. So it was a no pressure installation really. So we put the steam on.
That sounds brilliant. And I think this had been really causing that particular customer a real headache for a while, hadn't it? It was driving them crazy.
Oh, it's been ongoing for 6 months, I think, while they were trying to solve the solution. So the day we rocked up, they were very, very happy. We could tell they were happy to see us. Tea and biscuits were brought forward straight away.
That's always a good sign. That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi Norman. Norman's asking, what are the size ranges available? Do you need individual bladders for each size, or can they be used for multiple sizes? That's a good question.
That one for Richard?
No, each bladder is specific to a certain diameter, and that's the diameter of the hose pipe and the diameter of the lateral coming in. So yeah, so sometimes you might, if you're doing a lot of 100 by 100 or 150 by 100, then you'd end up having to have 2 different bladders. And if you've got multiple bladders, we always recommend that you have 1 installation tool per bladder. It just makes life easier, so you don't have to keep stripping the bladder down and replacing it. The other thing to be wary of as well is these are silicone bladders. So when you finish using them and done the installation, just have to be very careful. It's not like a packer that you can throw onto the floor. It's not going to get damaged. Yeah, you throw this on the floor and there'll be a risk of putting a small pinhole in the bladder or ripping the bladder.
Well, that's a really good tip there. Thanks, Richard. So, Dan, can I ask you, what type of connections can you do with this system?
You can do both T's and Y's with this system. So if you've got a main that is 150, for example, and you've got a 100Y coming into it, that you can do that. It's not a problem. So we do all of those various sizes from 100 up to 300. So if you have a 225 diameter pipe, for example, that's got a 100 connection on it, you can get a 225 with a 100 connection with a 100 finger on it. So we do all of that as a range. Should cover most people's requirements, to be honest.
Fantastic. And we do double connections as well. I believe that if someone has a particular issue out there, you just have to come to Picote and we can usually custom make something for you too. So just might take a wee bit longer, but you just have to let us know what your situation is. So brilliant. Does anyone have another question for the team? I think you just covered this off really well, guys. I think there's just no questions because you did such a great job of covering off all the information. So thank you so much to everyone. Like I said before, if you do think of something afterwards, reach out to the guys. We're always happy to answer your questions. You can reach any of us by email or give us a call, no problem at all. And like I said, that video will be available in the next week or so. It'll go up on our website and it'll go up on YouTube as well. So thanks everyone for a fantastic presentation. We are going to do another webinar because we know how much you love them. So we're going to do our next one on the Maxi Miller, which is by far our powerhouse machine. And that has a huge range of tools and applications. So we want to cover off some of those special cleaning challenges, for example, removing concrete, including connections, removing failed CIPP lining, all of those really tough challenges that you can actually do with a Maxi Miller, which is designed for 3 to 10 inch pipes, so DN70 to 250. So we're going to do that on the 29th of February. It's another Thursday. And that 29th of February, that's only once every 4 years, people. So this is going to be a really good one. And that's going to be, again, at the same time, 3 p.m. GMT or 10 a.m. EST. So Steph, again, has preempted me and she's popped that information on there. So you can get registered for that one as well to get the most out of your Maxi Miller. Okay, well, I think that's a wrap for today. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We really appreciate it. And once again, thanks very much to the team for a great job. Have a good day, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.